Hello, I was watching the news last night and one of the newscasters shared with Arizona that there's going to be these huge changes coming for realtors in the coming days because of the National Association of Realtors settlement and the change to our forms and some of our systems. And I thought that might be a little bit confusing, a little bit too much noise out there. It's not, in my opinion, it's nothing that's negative. It's going to be a lot more transparency and helping buyers and sellers understand the process and how realtors get paid and all of that, but figured that I would just, in a very unscripted way, share with you some of the quick changes that you might want to be aware of. And there's so much more, and I can explain it in depth, but just in a nutshell, let me tell you that as far as buyers go, now buyers will need, prior to entering any home to view, they will need to sign what is maybe the equivalent of an employment contract with every agent. So don't assume that the agent that you're working with is pushing you hard to sign a document that you don't have to sign. That is now going to be required in the state of Arizona. And I want you to be so careful that you're not signing multiple buyer broker agreements. That's just really important. That's the one fear I have, is that buyers don't understand that when you sign that agreement, it's potentially linking you to your agent, and hopefully that's a great relationship and that's what you want. But in light of that, what you're promising that agent that you're working with is that you've negotiated a compensation, a seller professional fee, whatever that is, and that you will be paid. Now, that buyer's agent might say to you, listen, we'll try and get the seller to cover that compensation because it is very difficult right now in a more unaffordable setting, and you don't want to add these fees necessarily onto all of your costs as a buyer. That's going to be a conversation you have with your buyer's agent. But I just want you to know that you are signing an agreement that they will be paid one way or another. On the listing side of it, you as a listing agent, and I do a lot of listings, more than I even do buyers. And so when I sit with my clients, and I've sat with many since August 1st, which is when these forms actually changed, prior to August 1st, you would sit with me and you'd say, Rebecca, we'll use an apple as the compensation that we agreed to. Here's this full apple, and I'm going to give that to you, and then I want you to put my home on the MLS, and then you can split that apple with that 40, 60,000 realtors, whatever number it was at the time, and have them bring their buyers to my home. So that was our market around your home, was to incent buyers agents to bring their buyers, and they would get a portion of this apple. That flowed through me. Now it is going to be me sitting with my sellers and saying, hey, this is the agreement we have. This is the compensation that you will give to my broker as your listing agent. And now, do you want to offer compensation to a buyer for their agent? And I have sat in many listing appointments since August 1st, and every single seller has agreed that that makes sense to make a market around their home, to offer to offset that cost to a buyer. And it may not even be the full cost that a buyer's agreed to with their agent, but they are all so far agreeing that it is better for them to offer that compensation and take that off the plate of the buyer, so that the buyer will be able to come to the home and make it a little more affordable. So essentially, what we're doing now is, if I have this apple, my listing is saying, here's the apple. A portion of that apple will go to you, Rebecca, because you're listing my home and that's our relationship and we've agreed to this. And then a portion of this apple, should I choose to give some of that apple, will go to the buyer broker. Now, whether that buyer asks for that apple, depending on how the market is and how strong it is, or what their buyer wants to do, they may not ask for it, but there is an addendum to the contract now that will make that request should the buyer want the seller to help them out with that compensation. This gets really confusing, but it super makes sense in my head. More transparency, more explanation, a cleaner, clearer path to who gets paid and how. And so I think it's going to be a great thing. Now, are you going to get these one-off boutiques and agents who are like, you don't have to pay anybody, Mr. Seller. We're not going to do that. That's fine. You do what you want. But I believe it's going to create a stronger, better market around your house if you offer that compensation, and then the buyers don't have to worry about an additional whatever amount they agreed to for their buyer. And I would just implore you to please get representation, whether it is on the buyer side or the listing side. It makes a difference. I wouldn't go into a courtroom without representation. I wouldn't go to a closing table without representation. There's a lot of agents out there, and a lot of agents aren't going to understand all of this, and especially if they don't have a lot of experience. And so please make sure that you've got representation, and that representation understands all these changes and how to explain them and what they mean to you and why it makes a difference in a positive way, and give you the pros and cons. I look forward to talking to you. If you have any questions, I'm always here. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.